आप सबको
Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories this hour. The world watches and tensions rise in South Asia, and as Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says the country downed Indian jets in response to India's strikes, a claim denied by Delhi. Iran's foreign minister arrives in India with both Pakistan and India's national assemblies reconvening at 11 a.m. today. Cardinals return to the Sistine Chapel for a second day in a wide-open papal election. Black smoke from the chimney signals no pope is chosen yet in this historically diverse conclave. Russia's three-day ceasefire begins bringing calm to major Ukrainian cities after nights of heavy attacks. However, Ukraine says Russian forces launched bombs on the northern Sumy region despite the truce. North Korea launches multiple short-range missiles from its east coast, according to South Korea's military. The projectiles fly up to 800 kilometers before landing in the sea, possibly as a test for export purposes. Police arrest dozens of Columbia students occupying the main library in a pro-Palestinian demonstration. At least 40 are seen as detained and taken into vans, as officials say they requested police to end the occupation. China's President Xi Jinping lands in Moscow for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin hours after Ukrainian drone is shot down near the city. Xi's visit comes as Beijing continues to buy Russian energy, easing pressure from Western sanctions. Sudan's army says it intercepts drones targeting a naval base in Port Sudan amid days of intense attacks. Recent strikes have damaged fuel depots and aid routes, with blame pointed at the RSF paramilitary force. US President Donald Trump is expected to announce a major trade deal with the United Kingdom on Thursday, according to reports. He will hold a news conference in the Oval Office to discuss a deal with a big and respected nation. Our top story today, a blast rocked Lahore, mourning a day after India launched airstrikes on multiple targets in Pakistan, heightening fears of a wider military conflict between the two nuclear-armed nations. Pakistan's Defence Minister Khawaja Asif claimed 5 Indian jets were down, but offered only social media as evidence. On CNN, he failed to name the aircraft used or provide any proof, prompting the anchor to dismiss his claims. Let's take a listen in to what Khawaja Asif had to say.
So terrible. My position is I get along with both. I know both very well, and I want to see them work it out. I want to see them stop. And hopefully they can stop now. They've gone tit for tat, so hopefully they can stop now. But I know both. We get along with both countries very well, good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop. And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
Authorities in Jammu have ordered all schools, colleges and educational institutions in 5 border districts, Jammu, Samba, Kathura, Rajouri and Poonch, to remain closed today. In Kashmir, control rooms have been activated across the region to monitor developments following India's missile strikes on 9 terror infrastructures in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The district administration in Srinagar has set up a joint control room under the Disaster Management Authority to track the situation closely. The central government has called an all-party meeting to brief opposition leaders on Operation Sindoor, the high-precision offensive that targeted camps linked to Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba and Hizbul Mujahideen. Military Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju confirmed the meeting in a post on X. Meanwhile, the Indian Army confirmed the death of Lance Nayak Danesh Kumar from the 5 Field Regiment. He was critically injured in cross-border shelling in the Poonch earlier today and later succumbed to his wounds. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif claimed his country's forces retaliated promptly, alleging that 5 Indian jets were shot down, though no evidence was provided to support the claim. Civil defence teams in Bengaluru and Mumbai have begun drills to prepare for possible escalations following the missile strikes. And US President Donald Trump has also commented on the escalating tensions between India and Pakistan. We are joined by Arvind Singh Tejawat, foreign affairs expert located in New Delhi, to discuss this in more detail. Arvind Singh, what do you think of the current situation and the fallout after India's Operation Sindoor yesterday? We've passed the 24-hour period now. What do you think of the responses from both Pakistan and the rest of the world?
What I believe personally, and what I see the pattern in the past, I believe that the Pakistan will definitely retaliate. But in what way? So probably the Pakistani, the leadership is discussing with the military people over there. But I believe that they will definitely retaliate. But the issue is that they had indulged in that senseless and the useless work, which is the finally going to harm the economy of Pakistan. So I suppose what they are doing is not a good thing. And in that way, they are allowing, if the Pakistan is not economically stable, then it's not good for the India also. Because in that way, they are inviting China to enter into the Pakistan and to control their economy by giving debt and in many other ways. So now this is the time to think about that, what the policy they are willing to follow. So that I believe, but definitely you want to ask me that what is going to happen in coming days, then Pakistan will definitely retaliate.
Yes, and how does India respond to Pakistan's claim that it downed Indian jets after Operation Sindoor as a direct response to the Indian government's operation?
When the Pakistani PM was claiming that they shot down Indian aircraft, the 5 Indian aircraft, then even the people who were sitting behind them, they were smiling there in their parliament. So you can understand that how truthful the Pakistani PM is. So I hardly believe, and not even they have produced the evidence in favor of their claim. So personally, I believe that their claim is totally false. But the India, if they are claiming false, if they are giving a false statement, the India in turn can give or may show the truth. But I believe that the India is not willing to do that because this is not the right time. If they are claiming to satisfy their population, to satisfy their people, then I suppose it's okay. If they are claiming that they have shot down the 5 aircraft and if their people, the Pakistani people are satisfied, okay, they have really given a right reply, then I think okay. Yeah.
Arvind Singh Tejawat, thank you very much for joining us. We now move to the United States now, where in a major development, US President Donald Trump is expected to announce a trade deal with the United Kingdom on Thursday, according to some reports. Trump confirmed an announcement on Truth Social, saying he will hold a press conference at 10 a.m. Eastern Time from the Oval Office. He called it a major trade deal with a highly respected country and hinted it would be the first of many. While the White House has not yet commented, a UK official says both sides have made strong progress. The deal may include lower tariff quotas on steel and autos. This comes after Trump imposed a 10% tariff on most countries last month. Britain was spared as it imports more from the US than it exports. Meanwhile, Trump also has hinted at future deals with India, Japan and South Korea. We stay in Europe now, where all eyes are on the chimney of the Sistine Chapel as the papal conclave enters day 2 in Vatican City. On Wednesday evening, black smoke rose into the sky, signalling that cardinals failed to elect a new pope in their first vote. In the 133 cardinals who are locked inside of the chapel under strict secrecy need a 2/3 majority, which means 89 votes to choose the 267th pontiff. They spent the night in the Vatican guest houses and are set to resume voting this morning, with 2 rounds scheduled before lunch and 2 more in the afternoon. Wednesday's lone vote followed an afternoon of rich tradition and prayer as tens of thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square. The crowd groaned when the black smoke emerged, which is a sign that no consensus was reached. Yemen's Houthi rebels say they'll continue targeting Israeli ships in the Red Sea, despite a US Houthi ceasefire brokered by Oman that halts attacks on American and other vessels. Houthi official Abdul Malik Ajari says that Israel is not included in the deal. The rebels, backed by Iran, began attacks on Israel-linked shipping after the Israel-Hamas war broke out in 2023 and later expanded to target US and UK vessels. This week's ceasefire followed deadly Israeli strikes on Sanaa Airport, which caused $500 million worth in damage, according to the Houthis. Houthi spokesperson Yahya Sari claimed drone attacks on Ramman Airport and on Tel Aviv continued. The US says its campaign, dubbed Rough Rider, struck over 1,000 Houthi targets, killing 300 people. Trump welcomed the ceasefire, calling it a Houthi capitulation, while the UN and Saudi Arabia urged restraint and de-escalation. Let's take a listen in to what Yahya Sari said.
غزة نفذ سلاح الجو المسير عمليتين عسكريتين. الأولى استهدفت مطار رامون التابع للعدو الصهيوني في منطقة أم الرشراش جنوبية فلسطين المحتلة، وذلك بطائرتين مسيرتين. والأخرى استهدفت هدفا حيويا للعدو الصهيوني في منطقة يافا المحتلة، وذلك بطائرة مسيرة نوع يافا.
Let's move on once again now. US Vice President J.D. Vance says nuclear talks with Iran are moving in the right direction, stressing Tehran can pursue civilian nuclear power, but not uranium enrichment that enables weaponization. Speaking at the Munich leaders meeting in Washington, Vance drew a clear red line against weapons-graded enrichment. President Trump echoed caution, saying it's still undecided whether Iran can maintain its enrichment program if it doesn't lead to a bomb. High-level US-Iran nuclear talks resumed on April the 12th, their first since Trump withdrew them from the 2015 deal in 2018. A 4th round set for May the 3rd was postponed due to logistical reasons, according to the mediator, Oman. Western nations, including the US, have long suspected Iran of seeking nuclear weapons, claims Tehran strongly denies, maintaining its nuclear activities for peaceful civilian use only. Let's take a listen in to what J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States, had to say about the issue.
So far, we're on the right pathway, but this is going to end somewhere. And it will end either in Iran eliminating their nuclear program, their nuclear weapons program. They can have civil nuclear power, okay? We don't mind that. But let me ask this basic question. Which regime in the world has civil nuclear power and enrichment without having a nuclear weapon? And the answer is no one. No one right now has a civil nuclear program with their entire enrichment infrastructure that can enrich to the 90+% needed to get to fissile material and a nuclear weapon. So our proposition is very simple. Yes, we don't care if people want nuclear power. We're fine with that, but you can't have the kind of enrichment program that allows you to get to a nuclear weapon, and that's what.
Let's once again move to Europe, where a 3-day truce ordered by Russian President Vladimir Putin has officially taken effect. The ceasefire, timed with Moscow's Victory Day celebrations, is meant to test Kiev's readiness for peace, but Ukraine has rejected it, calling the move a political stunt. Kiev continues to push for a longer 30-day ceasefire, an idea first proposed by the United States and backed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Russia has not formally responded, only insisting enforcement mechanisms are still lacking. Hours before the truce began, both sides launched fresh aerial attacks. Russian airports shut down temporarily, and at least 2 people were killed in Ukraine. Despite the ceasefire order, the Kremlin warns it will retaliate if Ukraine fires during the truce. Meanwhile, US President J.D. Vance says diplomacy is still possible, but only if sides agree on direct communication terms. Moving on once again, Chinese President Xi Jinping has landed in Moscow for high-stakes talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This comes just hours after Ukrainian drones once again targeted the Russian capital, forcing airport shutdowns ahead of his arrival. Xi's trip signals deepening ties with Moscow as China remains Russia's top buyer of oil and gas and a critical economic lifeline amid Western sanctions. Beijing, however, remains silent on the drone strikes, urging only that tensions not escalate further. Also in Moscow, Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro. He and Putin signed a strategic partnership agreement after talks focused on energy and oil. The Kremlin called it a major milestone. Other leaders are also pouring into Russia for the May 9th victory parade. That includes Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel, Brazil's Lula da Silva, and Serbia's Alexander Vučić, who was briefly delayed in Baku due to regional airspace closures linked to the drone attacks. Moscow, now the stage for growing anti-West alliances, is rolling out the red carpet. We are joined by Jim Rice, Professor of International Law, located in Vigan, the Philippines, to discuss this story in more detail. Jim, thank you for joining us. When Russia last declared a ceasefire, Jim, on its own accord, it was on Easter, and then there came multiple violations from both sides, accusations of these violations. Do you think this one is going to last, this 3-day ceasefire?
Thanks for having me on. I think almost certainly this ceasefire will not last. Putin has broken almost all of the ceasefires that they have called for, and I believe that this particular ceasefire, coinciding over their Victory Day celebrations in Moscow and the military parade in front of the Kremlin, is really designed to try and avoid the possibility of any kind of military strike or a drone strike on Moscow during that parade. I would point out, however, that such a military parade is a legitimate military target. So yeah, to answer your question briefly, I would say it's almost certainly the ceasefire will be broken, certainly on Putin's part.
Jim, plenty of world leaders, plenty of powerful people in Moscow for the next few days. The Kremlin showing it still has presence on the international stage. The main one, of course, being China's Xi Jinping. What are your thoughts on the convening of all these anti-West powers?
Well, you read out a list of a fairly spotty group of nations: Venezuela, Cuba, perhaps Nicaragua is in there as well. And of course, the exception to this marginal list would be Xi Jinping of China. And I think it must be noted that Xi Jinping has been supporting Russia with sanctions busting, as well as non-military and military aid.
Yes, and do you see, obviously the ceasefire is meant to last 3 days, but do you see this ceasefire as a genuine effort towards peace, or is it just a public relations move, as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky believes it is to be?
Most certainly, it's a public relations ploy. It's a very cynical one as well. I note that Putin's strikes over the past several months have been almost exclusively on civilian targets, including these massive glide bombs as well as their drone attacks. So it's a cynical ploy on the part of Russia.
Yes, I just want to get your reaction as well to these recent strikes that Kiev claims on the region of the Sumy. Not high hopes for this proposed ceasefire proposed by Vladimir Putin.
Well, again, when you mention Sumy, I think of just a few weeks ago when Russia launched this massive attack against civilians in Sumy, killing scores of people, and they obviously haven't changed their tactics, and they continue to do this. And again, if they really wanted peace, it would be easy for Russia to do. Peace could be done within a day. At this point, I think even J.D. Vance has become slightly frustrated because he himself has said that Russia is expecting too much, and indeed they are.
Yes, Jim, and obviously the US has said it's going to pull out as its role as mediator, even in contrast to Donald Trump's previous comments that he would get the war fixed in 24 hours. What has been your view on the US's recent diplomatic moves in regards to this conflict in specific?
Well, it's been really a tragedy. I noticed that yesterday, former President Joe Biden gave an interview, the first one since leaving the president's office. He gave an interview with the BBC, and he correctly described the situation of the Trump administration as modern-day appeasement. And indeed, I would agree with former President Biden on that.
Jim Rice, thank you very much for your insight, as always. We now move on once again. At the United Nations, the United States criticised Russia for cynically obstructing monitoring efforts on North Korea's compliance with UN sanctions. Speaking at a Security Council briefing, US envoy Dorothy See accused Moscow of blocking oversight to avoid criticism for using North Korean weapons in its war against Ukraine. She said Pyongyang has sent over 24,000 containers of arms and more than 100 ballistic missiles to Russia since September 2023. Shea also pointed out to evidence that Chinese companies are also importing banned coal and iron from North Korea. Here's what the US ambassador for the United Nations, Dorothy Shea, had to say.
Clear from evidence presented today that Russia is cynically obstructing the Council on DPRK sanctions implementation in order to try to escape reproach for its own violations. Meanwhile, China insists that it fully implements the Council's resolutions, but we have just seen evidence of Chinese authorities looking the other way as PRC companies import DPRK coal and iron ore in violation of this Council's resolution.
Meanwhile, Russia's UN ambassador, Vasily Nevensia, defended Moscow's stance. He urged the Council to radically reconsider its approach and blame the West's Cold War mindset for the stalemate. Listen in to what Russia's UN ambassador had to say.
Совету Безопасности следует кардинально пересмотреть подходы, чтобы вывести ситуацию из опасного тупика, а не усугублять ее еще больше. Мы не раз говорили, с каких направлений можно было бы начать движение к нормализации. Но для этого в западных столицах должны коренным образом перенастроить мышление, которое до сих пор основывается на парадигме холодной войны.
In March 2024, Russia vetoed the resolution that had enabled UN monitoring on North Korea since 2006. The monitoring body no longer exists, raising concerns over unchecked sanction violations. We move on once again. The US Federal Reserve has paused rate cuts once again, warning that President Trump's tariff moves could derail its inflation and job targets. FED officials voted unanimously to hold the key lending rate between 4.25 and 4.50%. The FED maintains its dual mandate to fight inflation and unemployment, but analysts say the administration's tariffs may drive both up in the short term. The central bank noted strong economic activity despite trade volatility, pointing to a pre-tariff import surge in early quarters. Last month, Trump slapped heavy tariffs on China and lower levies on other countries, sending markets into weeks of uncertainty. The White House then delayed many of those tariffs until July to renegotiate trade deals. Recent data shows a likely economic slowdown in Q1, even as unemployment remains low and inflation nears the FED's 2% goal. Let's listen in to what Trump had to say.
No.
Do you have any plans on doing that?
None whatsoever. Never did. The press runs away with things. No, I have no intention of firing him. I would like to see him be a little more active in terms of his idea to lower interest rates. This is a perfect time to lower interest rates. If he doesn't, is it the end? No, it's not. But it would be good timing. It could have taken place earlier. But no, I have no intention to fire him.
Jerome Powell commented on inflation, economic uncertainty, Donald Trump, and FED cuts. Let's listen in.
You know, it's going to depend. I think you have to just take a step back and realize this is why we are where we are. Is we're going to need to see how this evolves. There are cases in which it would be appropriate for us to cut rates this year. There are cases in which it wouldn't. In support of our goals, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged. The risks of higher unemployment and higher inflation appear to have risen, and we believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments. So when they do settle out, what will be the implications for the economy, for growth, and for employment? I think it's too early to know that. So, I mean, ultimately, we think our policy rate is in a good place to. I don't think we can say, which way this will shake out. I think there's a great deal of uncertainty about, for example, where tariff policies are going to settle out. And also, when they do settle out, what will be the implications for the economy, for growth, and for employment? I think it's too early to know that. So, I mean, ultimately, we think our policy rate is in a good place to stay as we await further clarity on tariffs and ultimately their implications for the economy.
Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.